Over the last few months, I've been trying to find more ways to connect with nature and create things from what I already have, instead of purchasing everything all the time. Whether it's finding new ways to cook with my pantry staples, reusing ingredients, or exploring traditional skills, I keep coming back to one idea. What's already out there that I haven't noticed yet? I've always been inspired by nature and foraging. I used to think foraging was really complicated. I was always worried I'd misidentify a mushroom or get sick from eating something unsafe. But once I started looking online, I found this amazing resource, the Christchurch City Food Map. It's a part of the wider initiative called Edible Christchurch, and it lets you find publicly accessible fruit and nut trees all around the city. What I love about this is it gives me more confidence to explore. Now, instead of being intimidated by all the unknowns, I feel like I have a guide, something that helps me to connect with what is already growing around me, and maybe even create something from it. So today, I'm going to take you along as I explore some of the edible treasures I found, and share how the map helped me to feel more confident in this process. After discovering the food map, I became curious about where it came from and why it was created in the first place. Once I started using it, I realized it was a part of the wider initiative called Edible Christchurch. According to Christchurch City Council, the food map is a key part of their bigger vision called food resilience. After the earthquakes, the idea of resilience became central to Christchurch's recovery. And in 2014, the council adopted a food resilience policy. Their goal was to create, as they say, the best edible garden city in the world. What I love about this is it's not just about fruit trees. It's about making healthy, affordable, locally grown food accessible for everyone and building community around it. As I've spent more time using the map, I've started to keep notes of my favorite locations so I can find them again in future seasons. One thing I've learned is that the map isn't always perfect, but that's okay. I've only come across 2 locations where I couldn't find the tree or plant that was marked. That could be simply because the tree is no longer there, it was marked incorrectly, or I've missed it. Fortunately, even in those locations, I've still managed to find edible plants nearby, so the trip was never a waste. So for me, this map became more than just a tool. It gave me a way to connect with my neighborhood and really see the potential around me. One of the finds I was most excited about were these olives. I ended up collecting a cup's worth. Olives have been cultivated for thousands of years and are a staple ingredient in many cuisines around the world. They are a good source of healthy fats, antioxidants, and vitamin E. What surprised me when I first learned about olives is that you can't usually eat them straight off the tree. Raw olives are usually incredibly bitter once picked. And if you've ever wondered why you can only find olives in a jar, it's because they have gone through a curing process to remove much of the bitterness. So I begin the process with the olives I've collected. The first step is soaking them in fresh water and changing the water every day. Over time, this helps draw out some of the bitter compounds and prepares them for the next stage. After a few weeks, I'll move them into a salty brine, but that's going to be for a future project. I've never cured olives before, so this is very much an experiment. For now, I'll keep changing the water each day and see how they develop. Once they're ready for the next stage, I'll make an updated video and show you how they're progressing. I was surprised to find hazelnuts on my walk. I ended up collecting half a cup, which was enough for me to take home and experiment with. Hazelnuts are rich in healthy fats, fiber, and vitamin E. They're used for everything from baking to confectionery to nut butters and spreads. Just like the olives, they're not quite ready to be eaten straight away. The hazelnuts need to be toasted before we can use them. After rinsing the hazelnuts and separating the cracked shells from the usable ones, I roasted them in the oven at 150 degrees for 15 minutes. Once they had cooled slightly, I cracked them to see what was inside. As this was my first time processing hazelnuts myself, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. But thankfully, a good number of them turned out to be usable. After separating the edible nuts from the shells, I decided to use some to make a simple hazelnut sauce. I also baked a brownie to go with it. The sauce had a rich, nutty flavor that paired really well with the chocolate brownie. One thing I noticed, however, is that some of the hazelnuts still had slight bitterness even after roasting. Because these are wild hazelnuts rather than commercially grown ones, there was naturally quite a bit of variation in flavor from nut to nut. Most were pleasantly nutty, but a few left a slight bitter aftertaste. It was interesting to compare them with the hazelnuts you buy in the supermarket and seeing how different wild foods can be. The hazelnut sauce complemented the homemade brownie. Even though this was a simple dessert, it was a satisfying way of turning something I found outdoors into a delicious dessert I could enjoy at home. I came across mulberries on my travels and collected just under a cup. Because I have never tried them, I was willing to experiment with them. One thing I noticed while picking them was the difference in color. Some of the berries were still dark red, while others had ripened to a deep purple color. The red berries were a little firmer and slightly more tart, while the darker berries were sweeter. Mulberries are a good source of vitamin C, iron, and antioxidants, and despite being incredibly versatile, they're not something you often see in the supermarkets because they're quite delicate and don't store well. Because I only had a small amount, I decided to not make a jam, but instead add them to an apple crumble. I already had some apples at home, and the mulberry seemed like a good way to add an extra bit of flavor and color to the filling. For the filling, I peeled and chopped the apples, added mulberries, and mixed together everything with a little sugar and cinnamon. For the crumble topping, I combined flour, oats, brown sugar, and butter until it formed a crumbly texture, then sprinkled it over the fruit before baking it until golden brown. The finished crumble had a subtle mulberry flavor running through it. It's one of the things I enjoy about foraging. Sometimes you come home with a full basket of food, and others it's just a handful of something that can be added to one of your favorite recipes. The last thing I found were feijoas. I only collected a few today, but they're one of those fruits that always remind me of autumn in New Zealand. Feijoas are believed to originate in South America, but they've become incredibly popular here. And during the season, it often feels like everyone knows someone is trying to give them away. They're a good source of vitamin C, fiber, and antioxidants. And one of the things I like about them is that they're easy to eat. Most people simply cut them in half and scoop out the flesh with a spoon. The flavor is often described as a combination of pineapple, guava, and mint, although I think feijoas have a taste that's pretty unique to themselves. They're also incredibly versatile and can be used in baking, smoothies, jams, chutney, and desserts. Because I only collected a few today, I decided to enjoy them fresh. But they're definitely something I'll keep my eye out as the season continues. Before I started exploring the food map, I honestly had no idea how many edible plants and trees were growing around Christchurch. It's been surprising to discover how much is out there waiting to be found and used. One of the themes you've probably noticed throughout this channel is learning to use what I already have, whether that's ingredients sitting in my pantry, plants growing in my garden, or food that's already growing in my local environment. For me, projects like this aren't really about finding free food. They're about learning to see the possibilities in things I might have previously overlooked and becoming a little more aware of the resources that already exist. If you're based in Christchurch and you're interested in exploring for yourself, I'll definitely recommend checking out the Christchurch City Council food map. It's a fantastic resource for finding publicly accessible fruit and nut trees throughout the city. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm looking forward to see how the olives turn out over the next few weeks, and I'll make sure to share an update once they're ready for the next stage. Thank you for spending some time with me here at Tulip Grove, and I'll see you in the next video.